United Lutheran Church of Grand Forks, I am so excited to be with you today. Thank you for the invitation to share my thoughts with you today as we celebrate who we are called as church for the sake of the world. Now, I don't know if you know it, I have 12 colleagues there's 12 of us like myself across the country, and we are on a gratitude tour. The campaign for the ELCA was from 2014 to June 30th of this last summer, 2019, 5.5 years. It was celebrated at the Churchwide Assembly in Milwaukee, and we are here everywhere we go. We share our thanks. Thank you for your part in the campaign. Your generous gifts totaled nearly $85,000 during that time frame. You supported Reconciliation Lutheran Church Community Center and Clinic in Juba, South Sudan. You've supported ELCA Good Gifts that have supported programs in ELCA World Hunger. You've supported Young Adults and Global Mission and Lutheran Disaster Response. We are so grateful. Thank you. The ELCA cannot accomplish comprehensive new and growing partnerships without generous support. Together, we are able to make such a difference through the ministries of our church. Thank you. Now, today, your interests, and we're going to talk a lot about South Sudan and Tanzania, just beautifully align with the gospel lesson, Matthew 28, the Great Commission. Go and make disciples of all nations. And then our call as the ELCA, we are church for the sake of the world. Now there's going to be two themes, two topics or threads throughout my comments. I want to point those out to you. And that is in our work of the church and walking with our companions. It is a time in our world where there are serious issues for displaced people, for immigrants and refugees. So listen for that. The second topic is, in our world today, is addressing gender justice and opportunities for women and girls for access to education, healthcare, jobs, owning land, owning businesses. Now, it is really neat to follow your story, to know of your history of relationship with Tanzania and now South Sudan. As the ELCA, we work church to church with our companions. Our companion church in South Sudan and Tanzania are very different from one another, and it's an intriguing position to look at both of those as bookends of your relationships. Now, in ELCA Global Mission, we promote walking with our companions, walking with our neighbors near and far. And the model we explain is accompaniment. Now, wonderfully, the scripture that backs up accompaniment is, of course, what Pastor Peter Schmidt shared last weekend. It's the story of the disciples on the road to Emmaus, when they should be prepared to meet Jesus again and again. But it's unexpected, and they do not recognize Jesus. It's this story that reconciles us to God and reconciles us to one another. It provides hope for our faith and our work. Now, in accompaniment, we have 5 values. I want to quickly name those values and give you a very simple definition. As we relate to communities and companions through accompaniment, walking together, we value mutuality, inclusivity, vulnerability, empowerment, and sustainability. Mutuality is that everyone is equal. We trust each other. Inclusivity would mean that all can be present, but we might need to ask who's excluded from this conversation, from this relationship, and why. Vulnerability means that our power should be equal. We might have to let go of some of our power and authority. Empowerment then might mean that we give power to others who have not had it. Sustainability means relationships take work And as church, we can work globally because we have decades and decades and even longer of relationship. But it takes work and it takes a commitment. Now, the Companion Church in Tanzania, we're all members of Lutheran World Federation. It is the second largest evangelical Lutheran church in the world, at over $6 million, 6 million members. The ELCA, we're the 8th largest evangelical Lutheran church, and we're at over 3 million members. Let's look at South Sudan, which is a brand new church. It's a baby in the scheme of things. Now, South Sudan is also the newest nation in the world, formed in 2011, and in years since then, several years since then, it's a country that has had civil unrest. Tribes are fighting with each other. It makes it very difficult there. There are nearly 2 million people that are displaced within the country itself, and many are forced to leave the country as immigrants, as refugees. And that's because of food insecurity, a lack of access to health care and education, and also community violence. Now, our companion church there is the Evangelical Lutheran Church, Africa Mission in South Sudan. We're big on acronyms, ELCA, MSS. Hopefully I got that right. And wonderfully, our church, who is our church there? I think you are aware of our 2 missionaries who themselves are Sudanese gentlemen, Sudanese pastors, and that is Maween Eric and Wal Reet. Those 2 men, those 2 missionaries that lead our companion church relationship are actually from some of the separate warring tribes. Maween is a Dinka, and Wal Reet is a Nuer, N-U-E-R. And it's amazing what that brings to our work as church and in accompaniment. Now also, the church that you've invested in there, represented by a building named Reconciliation. What could be more hopeful than our missionaries and this new church in this land? So your gift to Reconciliation Lutheran Church, Community Center, and Clinic was $45,000 over 3 years and during the campaign. And the project overall was $1 million. This is our partnership. This was walking with our new church companions in South Sudan. Basically, you're a 5% shareholder in this new church. I think that's exciting and incredible. Now, ground was broken in 2015, and when they broke ground, we're helping build a new church with our companions. But the countrymen said, more than a church, we need a clinic. We need to take care of women and mothers. We need better maternal care. We need to have strong babies being born and cared for. And so suddenly, this church had a completely new mission, a very broad mission to involve a community center and a clinic. Now, I know you're very close to Dr. Mark Jacobson, one of our missionaries in Tanzania, and immediately Mark was called to help consult in the preparations for this clinic. And over time, his colleague team in Tanzania actually has had an incredible, life-changing, life-giving experience with the South Sudan Clinic at Reconciliation. 2 times, for a week at a time, Mark has traveled with a team of physicians and nurses to help provide surgeries for women who have fistulas. This means they cannot easily go to the bathroom. They cannot control how they go to the bathroom. They are urinary and fecal incontinent. This is incredibly difficult to live with dignity in your own home, in your own family, let alone the community. Over these 2 weeks of time, 30 women had surgery to repair their fistulas. and they recovered. And what a life-changing, life-giving experience. As part of that, there are 60,000 women and girls in South Sudan who have fistulas that are untreated. There is and 2 million globally. There's a great desire for this clinic in South Sudan to continue and build upon that expertise. It's very exciting. In 2018, 10,000 people visited the clinic. They were visiting mostly for immunizations, for HIV and hepatitis screenings, for prenatal care, for trauma care, for parental education, and more. As of July of 2019, there had already been 8,000 visits. Can you imagine the growth and the activity in this health clinic that you have made possible? Now, there have been some things that have happened along the way and some adjustments. With the surgeries and with the fact that women are coming for prenatal care, they're actually ending up having babies at this clinic. We weren't prepared to have beds there, an overnight stay. So what's happened is some of the classrooms for the community center have been at least short-term retrofitted for these guests and patients of the clinic. It's exciting, it's challenging, you can imagine, but imagine the safety and security this building provides. Now, in addition, the community center and the clinic are committed to being a community center. Livelihood is needed for this large population in the community. So funding through ELCA World Hunger, which helps provide the health care, is also helping provide the community center. And computer training, sewing classes, space for students to study after school, a library to be safe and secure. These are still really important priorities for this center besides worship, besides the health care. And you are part of it. Now, this story has a part besides you that's right here in Eastern North Dakota Synod. And it's the fact that there are displaced South Sudanese people, the Lutheran Church in Fargo. That's part of the diaspora. That's part of this church. They're as much a part of the ELCA and excited for this partnership and how we're walking with this new church in South Sudan. There's much more work to do, and we are very excited about the hope and the possibilities. Now, United Lutheran Church has a very long, wonderful relationship with Tanzania, and we've mentioned our missionary, one of our missionaries there, Mark Jacobson, and the health programs. Our companion church in Tanzania was started in 1938. Pastor was mentioning this church was built in 1931. You have kind of a same age and legacy there. That church, over decades and decades, there are 20 different companion church relationships across the ELCA, where one of our synods is connected with one of the dioceses in Tanzania. There are years and years of wonderful accompaniment relationships happening across our church, across this country, and across our church and companion in Tanzania. You know well, I'm assuming you know well of the strength of relationships there and also the challenges. We have long, long relationships with educational programs, schools, primary, secondary, colleges, also providing pastoral education, very important to our companion church, but also drawing students from across the evangelical Lutheran churches in Africa to Tanzania to take advantage of this. And then definitely the health care that has developed in Tanzania as a result of the many hospitals in most of the dioceses. And that is part of Mark's legacy and longtime career there. But let's imagine that Tanzania has similar issues that we might have here, or that even South Sudan has. There are urban and rural divides. There are economic and resource divides in those different communities. There are also gender justice issues. In our ministries of the ELCA, when we're working in rural communities, it is very common that women and girls are going to have challenges related to early marriage, having children early, and not being able to continue with education or even pursue education in the first place. We know that in Tanzania there are many populations, the Maasai people, a patriarchal culture, where this is a challenge, this is an issue for our companions, and we walk with them. Now, we don't have enough time. There are many things we could talk about. I wish I could be with you next week when you're talking about your call locally. There are so many issues here in North and South Dakota where I travel frequently: Eastern-Western divide, urban-rural divide, American Indian issues in our worshiping communities, how we care for our families, those of you that are farmers that have hardship right now with changing weather patterns in our harvests. It's an amazing time to be church, and we are so grateful to work with you. We must look to the world locally, globally, outside our walls, and beyond our safe spaces to do more, to be active, to participate in partnership, and celebrate relationship, to walk with our neighbors and companions. United Lutheran Church of Grand Forks, your church, the ELCA, the campaign for the ELCA is grateful for your partnership. There's more to do, and we're excited to build on our friendship and relationship, to invite and support your next endeavors. As we remember the gospel for today, Jesus lived, died, and rose again to bring peace and reconciliation to the earth. This peace makes it possible to lead in faith and in love, to care for our neighbors, to make disciples of all nations, and to be church for the sake of the world. Amen.